No, I am absolutely appalled. I am shocked. I think this statement of the whoever has made this statement, making a preposterous statement. I mean, this is an unbelievable statement that based on my evidence or my statement that the police have arrested the former chief minister. I've said both before the magistrate and the police, and none of these facts, none of these dots connect to anything that is remotely can be held considered responsible for the arrest of anyone, let alone the chief minister. And my notings or Miss Suneetha's notings are being read out of context. I mean, in a personal scrapbook, we can write anything. So to say that they have simply vanished into thin air, I mean, unless there's some officials who have managed this or the ministers who have managed this for magicians, it's simply not possible to say that the files have disappeared and nobody was responsible.
In this case, the entire 10% was given in one go to the department because the company asked for it. I'm saying, is that the usual procedure?
I mean, this is not a general practice. As I said, this is not a general practice, and that is precisely the reason that there was so much back and forth in this. I mean, absolutely not. I think it's normal for any chief minister, and particularly somebody like Mr. Naidu, to tell the chief secretary to follow up on important projects.
Hello and welcome to the News Minute. Joining us today is former IAS officer PV Ramesh, who retired as the Special Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh. He's quite a bit in news now because he was the Special Finance Secretary of Andhra Pradesh. Sir, my first question to you is that there were news reports in Andhra Pradesh that it was your statement which eventually led to Naidu's arrest.
Thank you very much, Dhanya, for having me and giving me an opportunity to clarify facts for what they are. I was Principal Finance Secretary of the Andhra Pradesh government from January 2012 to July 2016, which meant that I also oversee the state bifurcation. I was secretary before the state divided, and then later I continued with Andhra Pradesh. So just let me clarify that after the state divided, Andhra Pradesh state inherited 58% of the population and 45% of the state's revenues. So state was going through a difficult financial situation. And more importantly, Andhra Pradesh, which is as it exists now, is essentially a agrarian society, much less than an industrialized society. So, one of the major policy planks of the new government then, which was headed by Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, was to skill the youth of Andhra Pradesh, to give them the necessary uh, competence to be industry ready. So, industrialization was a major plank of this government, and a lot of investment and effort was made, both in terms of infrastructure development as well as attracting investments, both from domestic as well as the overseas investors. So, skill development, for the first time, a department was established under the Higher Education Department. Later, it became a semi autonomous department of its own, headed by a secretary and a minister. A corporation was established. One of the proposals that was received at that time was that the Siemens India, from its CSR funds, would provide hardware and software and set up six, if I remember rightly, of centers of excellence in skill development, and also skill development centers, 35 or 40 of them across the state. And this would come in the form of hardware and software, and that would valued at 90% of the total cost, and 10% would be the state government's contribution that would essentially go towards the trainers and training incident expenses. Now, this was the proposal, and so this proposal was considered by the government in the department, and the process of the department. The government is, when a new scheme is to be approved, it is examined in detail, a detailed project report is prepared, and it goes through a process of scrutiny in the finance department because it's supposed to be an independent department, and then goes up to the chief minister. and minister, chief minister, and the council of ministers. So this was a scheme that was approved by the council of ministers, just like the establishment of the department and the corporation was approved by the council of the ministers. This
So
happened
I have
sometime in
to, I have to
2014.
interrupt you there because I have to interrupt you there because the CID says that the corporation was installed by the chief minister without the permission of the council of ministers.
Let me clarify a couple of things, and I'm speaking here essentially based on my memory and the facts. I'm not representing a political party or one individual here. And I just wanted to set the record straight, and that is the whole purpose of talking to you and to the other media channels. Is number one, is I was told, I was examined by the CID 3 to 4 times. I've also given a statement to the magistrate as required under the 164 section of the Criminal Procedure Code. And I have given two written signed statements to the CID. And I have made it very clear. And during my entire interaction with the police officers, I came to know that there were no files that are available other than the shadow file of the finance department. Now, those files, to us, the assertion that the institution or a corporation was established without cabinet decision by any count is preposterous, because no department and no corporation of a government is set up unless the council of ministers approves it. Number one. Number two is that the budget was allotted, and budget in 2015-16 financial year, 370 crores was approved. Now, all budgetary proposals go through a very complicated approval process, procedures well established under the Constitution and thereafter under the rules and regulations that have been enacted from time to time. So anybody's assertion, it will be naive and not based on facts, because it's simply not possible. It's simply not possible to get budget allotted. It's simply not possible for a corporation to be established without the approval of the competent authority. And here, as far as the budget is concerned, it's the legislature. And as far as the corporation establishment is concerned, it is the Council of Ministers. Let me make one more point. I mean, basically, I'm told that the files are not available relating to this entire either. So the files must be available in the Department of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, and also the files must be available in the corporation. If they are missing, then the first task of the Criminal Investigation Department is to trace them out. And if they cannot be traced, fix responsibility on people who were responsible for its disappearance or destruction, whichever may be the case, and then take
But that
action
is
against.
not the case, this, Mr. PV Ramesh. The CID saying that the bureaucrats and Mr. Naidu are responsible for these records even going missing, for the files going missing, which becomes a part of the case, right? They are saying that these bureaucrats made sure the files were no longer there.
Now, if the files are gone, I mean, apparently the files are gone, and the files are gone. They're custodians of the files, and those gentlemen or lady, whoever was responsible for the disappearance of the files, must be determined. Because, I mean, just let me say this: the chief ministers, secretaries are not custodians of the files. They could be responsible for the disappearance, but every file movement, every file that moves, it moves with a track, and either physical track or a digital track. Because, I mean, by 2015, actually, the entire filing system was replaced with a digital filing system, an electronic office, an e-office system. So it's a digital tracking. But before that, we were managing with the manual files. But every movement from dusk to dusk, yes, I mean, there are just too many dusks through which the files move. It is recorded. There is a record, there's a track, there's a trace of every single file that comes to, let us say, if I was principal secretary, the file that comes to my office, the time it comes and the time it leaves is recorded both in a physical register as well as on a digital register record. So to say that they have simply vanished into thin air, I mean, unless there's some officials who have managed this or the ministers who have managed this for magicians, it's simply not possible to say that the files have disappeared and nobody was responsible.
Okay. Now let's go back to the CID questioning you. You said 4 times you spoke to the CID. The news report said that Naidu himself was arrested based on your statement that the money was released on the CM's insistence. Are you standing by that or are you rejecting that?
No, I am absolutely appalled. I am shocked. I think this statement of the whoever has made this statement, making a preposterous statement. I mean, this is an unbelievable statement that based on my evidence or my statement that the police have arrested the former chief minister, and I have great respect for the capabilities and the integrity of the police officials who are leading the investigation, and I have equal respect and regard for the Honorable Chief Minister, the former Chief Minister, with whom I worked very closely. And that is true of the current Chief Minister also, with whom I worked very closely. I hold all the leaders in high respect. So, having said that, let me clarify. My statement has been very consistently very clear. I've said both before the magistrate and the police what the procedure had been, what the events were, what the facts were. And none of these facts, none of these dots connect to anything that is remotely can be held considered responsible for the arrest of anyone, let alone the chief minister.
Why
Because,
not?
yeah,
I have a few questions here, sir. Let me
yeah,
ask you.
yes,
So,
please. Yes.
yes, the proposal comes before the chief minister in 2014. In 2015, there is a presentation done by Siemens. Within 1 month, the corporation is set up. Do you think that is unusual that the corporation is set up so quickly, or was the chief minister so immersed in this project that he wanted it?
No, I mean, okay. Let me clarify a few things. I don't really remember the chronological sequence of what happened, which meetings were held. But I've been very closely associated with both the chief ministers in their first years of their evolution as the chief ministers. And since having been a state reorganization secretary, apart from the principal finance secretary, I was also the state development commissioner. The skilling of the youth was one of
Hmm.
the major planks of the then government, to train them, to skill them, to make them industry ready, service ready was a major plank. So Mr. Naidu was very passionate about growth, about the youth employment, to give them employment, to give them skills. So he was consistently following it up because once the department was set up, departments and especially the departments in the secretariat, they are not operational entities. They are policy making bodies. They are responsible for strategy, policy, programming, and monitoring. The actual execution of the project and the program is done by line agency, which in this case was the corporation. So I'm not sure that there was a meeting and then the corporation was set up. No, the corporation was set up on its own feet, and corporation was required, and it still exists now. It still continues to function.
So before the file came to you, there was another noting by IAS officer Suneetha who had doubts about the viability of the project. Now, the doubt she raised is that we have no evidence of how it is worked out in Gujarat. Should we have such a large project? Why don't we just have a pilot project? Did you see that noting, and what did you think of that?
Okay, I mean, this requires a bit more of an explanation. Normally, what happens in the government is that there is a file that moves from the department. There are 25 ministers and 58 secretaries in Andhra Pradesh government. There used to be, at least when I was the principal finance secretary, and there are 227 departments. Now, in a way, the finance department is the bazaar, like the common market, so where every file from every department comes. Because under the rules, the business rules of business of the secretariat, anything that involves any new scheme or any modification of the existing program, any addition or deletion, any budget that is required, any expenditure that has to be incurred, any change in the plan of programs, anything that is going to the anything that has to be approved by the council of ministers, anything that has to be approved by the legislature, they all congregate in the finance department. Now, since there were just too much that comes in, and then there is no real track because a file comes and it goes away, and then we did. So, Andhra Pradesh introduced the system of a shadow file, that is shadowing of a file. And this is only limited to few states. Tamil Nadu is another state that I am aware of, and Andhra Pradesh and perhaps Telangana, which is part of Andhra Pradesh, continues the tradition. So the when a file comes to the finance department opens a parallel note file. It does not contain all the details of the main file. Some documents from that are taken so that we are very clear, and a note is written. And my department, when I was head of the finance, used to have more than 400 different staff dealing with the different departments. And my instructions to them was to record faithfully whatever they think needs to be recorded, so that we take an informed decision, number one. Number two is that we are aware of why we took that decision. Number three was that we keep a track of the ways, because what happens is the file comes from the department, it goes back, it comes again, it goes, it moves up, it moves down, and moves back. So this is so in a way it is like a scrap notebook that is maintained in the finance department. It doesn't have in a way an official sanctity in terms of the rules and regulations of the secretariat
But still,
business.
but
Okay.
still an IAS officer did note in that
Let
that
me,
you
I mean,
have
I'm just
certain
telling you.
resolutions.
I agree. I mean, let me explain. So, this set the context. So, this was a scheme, this Siemens CSR setting up the skill development was a program that was approved by the government. Based on that, the budget allocation was made by the legislature. Normal process is once the legislature appropriates the budget, that money is available to the department for its management. This is how it works across the country, and this is the legal provision. However, because of the problems in cash management, because you may not have the resources for expenditure, every department does what it likes. We have a system of budgetary control. We used to, the in fact, the system used to be in finance department that every single rupee that you spend, you come back to the finance, take an approval, and then get a budget release order. I changed the system, and we introduced what is called as a comprehensive budget release order, that which basically meant the funds are directly available to the departments. There are two ways the expenditure is incurred. One is that you spend the money and then produce the detailed vouchers and then claim the money. The other one is you release the money as an advance, which is called an AC bill. Now, in this particular case, this particular project, because this was a large sum, I think 300 crores or 300 odd crores, because
70 crores.
uh, the, no, 370 crores is the total budget of the department. And I think
Yes.
what the Siemens project was, I think about 300 crores or 270 crores, because 2,700 crores was the budget of the Siemens, that is 90%. And I suppose 300 crores was the budget from the state government. Now, this money was to be, so a team was sent to Gujarat, which included Mrs. Suneetha and Mr. Premchandra Reddy, Mr. Ganta Subbarao, and others. They went to Gujarat. They studied the project, what was implemented in Gujarat, because this was basically a clone of the Gujarat project. That's what we were told. And so they went, they saw, they had come back and gave a report. The department file said that this was a very good project. It was great success under the then Chief Minister, Mr. Modi, and this project could be replicated in Andhra Pradesh. And Andhra Pradesh was in greater need of skilling of its youth than perhaps Gujarat. So this was the recommendation. Now, the issue really related to whether the money should be released in advance or it should be released post facto, that is after expenditure, or it should be released in tranches, or it should be released in pari passu, parallel financing. All these options were considered and examined on file. And as I always encourage my officers to examine on file, and Mrs. Sunita might have had some reservations about the entire money being released. Now, so I never used to meet with the clients, but since this was part of a joint project, I convened a meeting with the then director or managing director, whatever it is. He was a high official. If I remember his name right, it was Sumit Bose. And we held a meeting with him and his other colleagues, plus with the skill development department. My colleagues from the finance department were present, and a presentation was made saying this is how the whole thing will unfold. And basically, the CSR committee of Siemens expected the commitment of the government, because governments, perhaps informally, what was not said is the governments are not known not to honor their financial commitments because of the financial constraints. So they would like this money to be deposited upfront,
But
and
did
so
you
that
find that strange? Do other companies insist that the government's financial capabilities should be made clear? Do they ask for the budgetary allocations to be made?
this is we there are two ways. Let me clarify. This is a good question. You see, usually, normally, what happens is the government is the financier of the projects. uh, but even in the public-private partnership projects, it's the government which funds the projects. It's not unusual for government to release funds. In fact, in all the contracts, civil contracts, 10% of the mobilization advance is given. I mean, if the scheme, if the project is, let's say, 10,000 crores, I mean, people, 10% of that, 1,000 crores is released as an advance to the contractor. And then the contractor starts the work. It is monitored by the department. So the situation there and here is very similar. Now, a large project like Polavaram project, which is 4,600 crores, 450 60 crores is released as an advance to the contractor. It's no different here. Is the project is
But is
3,000
that the
crores?
total commitment of the government in the Polavaram project? I don't know the total commitment. Here, the total commitment was around 300 crores, and that entire amount was given.
No, the total comment here, that's exactly the difference. I mean, let me say the total project value, the outlay of the project was 3,000 crores, of which
Yes,
the
but the government
government's
was supposed to be
contribution
10%. Yes.
10%. Correct, exactly. So 300 crores. So it's the same thing with the Polavaram. It's same thing with perhaps Kaleshwaram. Any of the big,
Yes.
all civil projects, 10% is given to the contractor as an advance. And so
So I
this
understood that, but I'm saying in this case, the entire 10% was given in one go to the department because the company asked for it. I'm saying, is that the usual procedure? That
yeah.
whatever is the government's commitment is fully released?
No, I mean, this is not a general practice. As I said, this is not a general practice. And that is precisely the reason that there was so much back and forth in this, that discussion and multiple options were considered on the file. And it was a fact that we had released as an exceptional basis. But let me also make it clear, the money was not given to the agency that was executing the project. It was released to the department, special purpose vehicle, the DigiTech or whatever its name, I don't remember, is
DesignTech.
the DesignTech. DesignTech is the executing agency into which because the Siemens did not have a mechanism of directly execution, they execute through the intermediate vehicle, and so they would supply the equipment and machinery, and the government's money would be parked there and will be utilized. And if you go back and read my file, we made it very clear to the Department of Skill Development that they must take all precautions to carefully monitor. We said that they must develop a matrix for monitoring. There would be a monthly reporting to the finance department as well as to the chief minister's office. The expectation was that there would be a careful monitoring of the execution of this project.
So, sir, if I'm getting the timeline correct, first the noting comes from IAS officer Suneetha. Then there is a meeting with Siemens where they give a presentation, and then your noting follows. Now, in between that, why did the chief secretary speak to you about the project? Because you have noted that the chief secretary spoke to me.
Okay. No, no. Okay. No, no. Yeah. Let me say this. The meeting was not held based on Sunita's note.
Okay.
The meeting was completely independent. Each of these meetings were independent of each other. It was not that because she wrote a note and then there was a meeting. No, It was as a part of a larger exercise because I had, in my long stint in the finance department, taken all possible precautions to exercise due diligence that every single rupee, which is a public money, which is held in trust by the government, it's not anybody's private money, is used with utmost due diligence. I mean, otherwise, there was, I can be very confident in my entire career that I had ensured that the money is utilized with utmost diligence. So there is not, the meeting was held much before. There was a meeting with the chief minister, there was meeting with the DesignTech guys, there was several internal discussions, there were several meetings with the Department of Skill Development Corporation. Now the chief minister used to carefully monitor all the projects. I mean, it's not just exclusive to skill development. He had a special interest. It was true for every single ministry, every single department. He used to monitor. He was one of the most hardworking political leaders and the chief ministers I've seen. I worked with the 11 chief ministers. He certainly was one of the hardest working ones. And then he would hold long, intense, very deep dive into the activities. So he had held a meeting on the skill development and had said that the release, and so this he would have said for various other projects as well. He would have said the same for maybe Polavaram, maybe for hydroelectric
Nothing
projects.
unusual that Naidu asked the chief secretary ensure that this project is on track properly.
No, I mean, absolutely not. I think it's normal for any chief minister, and particularly somebody like Mr. Naidu, to tell the chief secretary to follow up on important projects. And that's what the chief secretaries do, because particularly where multiple departments are involved. The finance department is much more as an advisory department, as a controller of the government finances. It is not an executing department, whereas chief secretary is a direct boss of all the departments secretaries, and then the chief ministers talk to chief secretaries. So chief secretaries calling finance secretary, chief ministers calling finance secretary, ministers calling, secretaries calling is a routine process. It happens all the time.
Okay.
And you may ask me, why did I record it on the file? I mean, because people think that it is an unusual thing. I mean, if you go through thousands of files I must have seen, I would have recorded the same thing and everything, including the time and the date and who spoke, who met, what they did, is something that is usual to me. I mean, it's a
So that
process.
has become the crux of the case, that you noted that the chief minister spoke to the chief secretary. The CID is saying that this shows Naidu has specific personal interest in the project, which is because he wanted to divert the money elsewhere.
I mean, maybe it's not usual in the government that the officers write anything. In fact, my long experience, I mean, I've been in my 5 years as finance secretary, where I must have seen thousands of files from virtually every department. I had seen very, very few secretaries who record anything on the file. They simply sign and then send it off. They have no view of their own. Now, maybe my long work in the international organization, 13 years of work, and particularly 5 years when I worked for the International Fund for Agriculture Development, working across Asia Pacific, I used to actually design projects, monitor projects, and then formulate development projects. And I used to very diligently take notes. I mean, I have thousands of notebooks in which virtually from the minute to minute is recorded. It may be an eccentric conduct on my behavior, and it's completely innocent, completely
And the
naive.
note didn't work well for Naidu. But I want to go back to Suneetha. When Suneetha wrote that she has this reservation, was that taken seriously? Because you mentioned that she was one of the officers who went to Gujarat to check how the project was functioning. And despite going to Gujarat, she had her reservations. Why was that not taken seriously? Why did you decide to release the entire amount and not in installments, or give some sort of a suggestion in that manner to the corporation?
I don't remember exactly what Mrs. I have great respect for her. She is a very competent professional, and she was extremely diligent. I was happy to really have her as a secretary. That she kept the conscience of everyone clear. So I don't exactly remember what she had written. It's
I
quite
can tell you
possible.
what she wrote. According to the CID, she said that in Gujarat, it was basically the skill development scheme was being run for engineering students. But in Andhra Pradesh, you all had made the project for engineering, dropouts, etc. So she said there is no real empirical evidence of success in Gujarat. Therefore, why don't we start a pilot, smaller project here?
No, yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Now, I mean, these are not projects, number one, which are run on pilot basis. I mean, given the need, I mean, ambition, the scale and the ambition. I mean, just let me give you an example. In a matter of 2 years, the Andhra Pradesh government, with Chandrababu Naidu's leadership, had obtained 30,000 crore financing from multilateral agencies, starting from World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, for various development activities ranging from the industrial corridor, the Vizag Chennai industrial corridor, the Chennai Bangalore industrial corridor. This on the industrial infrastructure, plus also on the industrial clusters to health, education, and special project for backward 165 extremely backward mandals. So a range of projects, and the ambition and the scale those days, and particularly of Mr. Naidu. I mean, I'm repeating not because I have any party affiliation. I'm saying this because he was an extraordinary visionary who really wanted it on a grand scale. So our impression was, I mean, if there was a 2,700 crore hardware that would come from Siemens, 300 crores is a small amount. And also considering the fact to transform an economy that was primarily agrarian in Andhra Pradesh into much more service and industry and manufacturing scale. And that was the goal as well. I mean, Andhra Pradesh, the contribution of the manufacturing to industry, manufacturing to state the gross domestic product was less than 10%. The expectation was that our ambition was to double it over a period of 5 years. And the entire movement was in that direction. In a matter between 2015, June 2nd, when the state formed or state divided, by 2015, September, when this particular file was approved, which is 1 year, 3 months. I mean, the amount of number of investments that flew into India in Andhra Pradesh was beyond imagination. We had several meetings in China, Japan, Korea. I mean, if you see today, the Kia Motors, the leading automobile producer in India, I mean, it had come during that period. And
Hmm.
so, in order for us to provide the skill force, if you see, just take two automobiles that materialized in a matter of 2 years. One was the Kia Motors, which today produces hundreds of thousands of automobiles that are much in demand, and the Isuzu from Japan. So it was the Andhra Pradesh suddenly blossomed into an industrial powerhouse, or the signs were very clear. And so obviously this could not have been done on a pilot project. This had
Okay.
to be taken to scale.
But so this ambition that Andhra Pradesh had to do everything on a mega scale, which perhaps was Mr. Naidu's intention, why is it that more attention was not paid on the fact that the third party assessment had not completed? The Central Institute of Tool Design had not submitted their report, says the CID, before the fund was released. So is it normal procedure for the finance department that they should have waited for the third party report?
No, actually, I mean, let me put it very bluntly. The finance department has absolutely no business to stop any release once it is a budget is approved and appropriated by the legislature. This is the legal position. I mean, I think
Hmm.
the whoever is speaking otherwise, they must go back to the drawing board and check on what is the legal position. Once the legislature approves, the finance department is nobody, really. It is for a practical purpose of managing the finances, because you don't have inexhaustible financial flows. You need to really living on a day-to-day basis, and particularly post bifurcation, Andhra really had to struggle to manage every single rupee. So the expect, I mean, it's easy for anybody, not just the police, anybody to say, why not do this, why not do that? Actually, finance department had no business after an appropriation act has been passed by the legislature. The finance was only acting as basically as a check in order to balance the money and the expenditure. So the entire responsibility for this really is with the skill development department. Now, what is not being said, let me also say this, and what is not being said is everybody is following why is money being released. Money has to be released, it's budgeted, it's approved, it's appropriated. I mean, nobody can stop that process. It should not have stopped. I mean, whether it is finance secretary or the principal finance secretary or the chief secretary or chief minister, this is right work responsibility to follow that. Number one. Number two, what is to be questioned is, if the money is released, did were the skill development institutions set up? Was the hardware software arrived? Were the people imparted training? These are not issues that are being discussed now. From all accounts, because I left the state and I went to center as REC chairman and managing director. Now I'm not sure what happened, but I returned back to the state in 2019 to work with the new chief minister, Mr. Jagan Reddy. Now the fact of the matter is that the skill development centers had been set up. They had trained lakhs of people. That included engineers, the ITI, the Polytechnic. You need to really skill the ITI products more than the BTech products, because they are the people who really are at the cutting edge, and they are the ones who may not have all the skills that are ready in order for productivity to increase. So
So you are
the
saying
issue
that the project happened, so it cannot be faulted.
that's right. So, number one, the project has happened. Number two, I also hear this talk about shell companies, money being diverted. Let me also clarify two, three things. One is, if there are indeed companies, I mean, my understanding is that these DesignTech received money not just from Andhra Pradesh government, but also from different sources. So it is income that is not, we do not know whether it's the money from Andhra government that has been diverted or somebody else. Number two, and these are all companies registered under the Companies Act, and there are board of directors, there are resolutions, board resolutions. There's a bank account. If there is a bank account, money is being diverted, somebody must have signed a check, somebody must have ordered through an RTGS transfer, or somebody must have taken cash. Who's that person? And then where did that money go? Now, these are the relevant questions
So
which
if
have
I
not been
understand you
answered.
correctly, yes, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that how does the Andhra Pradesh CID know that the money which went from DesignTech to those watching, the finance department releases the money to the corporation releases the money to DesignTech, and DesignTech has been accused of diverting the money to at least 10 different shell companies.
Correct.
What Mr. Ramesh is asking is that how does the CID know that the money which DesignTech sent to the other companies was from the Andhra Pradesh Corporation?
Correct.
And two, has this money been traced to Mr. Naidu? So are you saying that in your perspective, you did not see anything wrong? You would not say there was any corruption, at least the money was released from your department?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I can say that with absolute confidence that as far as the government procedure was concerned, that is what took place from the inception of the skill development department, the formulation of the schemes for skill training, to the establishment of the corporation, to the approval of the money by the legislature, to its release to the department, and thereafter to the executing agency, was perfectly in order, perfectly as per the procedure. I do not visualize, and my notings or Ms. Suneetha's notings are being read out of context. I mean, in a personal scrapbook, we can write anything. And I am I have the habit of writing this. So, as far as the government is concerned, as far as within the government, there has been no deviation from the legally established procedure. I
So
can
this
say
may
that with
not
absolute
pertain to
confidence.
your department, but my question is, once the money reaches the Andhra Pradesh the Skill Development Corporation, It is released in 5 to 6 tranches in around 4 to 5 months. Is that really normal? The entire money is given to that private entity in almost 4 to 5 months, even before the third party can give an evaluation.
Okay, when the money is given to the corporation, to Skill Development Corporation, it is transferred into a PD account. It's called a public deposit account, and the public deposit account is a virtual account. So, which basically means you have no cash in your account, but that cash is available to you. It's an assurance that that money is available to you, but the cash actually remains with the treasury bank, which is State Bank of India. But the corporation, that means it has now the authority to release that money and sign a check. And there is a check in balances. If the money value is above, check is more than 10 crores or 1 crore, it is countersigned by the finance secretary. So that's a procedure, just a safeguard. Now, release actually of this 300 crores in tranches obviously must have been taken by the Department of Skill Development based on the progress of the project. Whether, I mean, 4 5 months is a very normal time during which you release money to the executing agency, visualizing the
But
procedure
without the
in
evaluation,
progress.
the CBI, the report had not come from the Center for Tool Design about the evaluation of the project. Before that itself, the money was released.
I mean, I'm not familiar with that particular part of it. I mean, it may be unusual that, but I do not remember at any point of time we said that the release of money was contingent on the report of the third party. A third party, in fact, was appointed as a way of abundant caution to ensure that the quality
Mhm.
of this execution and the project is implemented as it was conceived. It was not contingent. That was not a precondition that money would be released only if this was completed. That was not the case.
So, from your conversation with me, what I understand is you believe nothing has gone wrong within your department. You find nothing unusual with the chief minister pushing for the project. So, then would you also be thinking that this is some sort of vendetta against the chief minister, that he's behind jail, the former chief minister, sorry, but he's behind jail now?
I mean, from what has transpired and what is in the public domain and what is in the on the documentation and what is my own knowledge of the process that has happened, I do not believe there is. I mean, if this is the only thing. I mean, if I'm not sure if there is a company from which the money somebody carried a briefcase and handed it over to the person, to chief minister who's being former chief minister who's being accused. I'm not aware of that part of it, but the entire procedure for the release of the money to the DesignTech Corporation was perfectly in order. And I do not believe, I mean, let the courts have to decide, but to make accusations, there must be a substantial and substantive suspicion that
And
that a crime had been committed, and I don't believe that there's an iota of evidence in that direction.
so, if the CID does find this trail of money, which they believe it has gone to the shell companies, but do you believe that if they do find the trail to Naidu or anyone close to him, then there is definitely proof of corruption, right?
No, absolutely. But then, if that is the case, then it should be in the public domain. I'm sure by now you would be talking about that rather than talking about the finance secretary's note file. This is the first time I think finance secretary's note file has been the basis for for arresting a former chief minister. I mean, I think it's a very bad precedent because it's a scrap notebook. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. The one problem, of course, is my own eccentricity of writing down everything. The much more importantly is a shadow file is not a normal process across the country. Several states don't have such a process. Only I think Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, I know, is some of the states that follow this procedure. It's an abundant caution. It's a safety mechanism. Plus, it also gives a sense of continuity and consistency. But this is the first time that I've heard a budget that is allotted, approved by the legislature, released by the finance department in accordance with the rules, is being considered as a criminal act. This is preposterous to say it mildly.
So you are also being accused of taking sides there, especially I was reading there was criticism about one of the interviews you gave to a television channel which apparently has affiliations to the TDP. So there are people saying that you are also being politically biased here.
No, I mean, I wish, Dhanya, I just want to make this very clear. I have been a professional civil servant all my life. I'm a doctor. Also studied law. And of my 36 years as a civil servant, 13 years were as an international civil servant working across the world. I worked in the United Nations headquarters for 5 years, Africa, Afghanistan, for the World Bank, and for various other countries, Asia, Middle East. Now, nowhere else. I understand the political polarization. Now, I do believe that, and I have worked, and strangely and coincidentally, I had been, I worked with 11 chief ministers, and three of them very closely, and all three of them belong to three different political parties. Mr. Kiran Kumar Reddy was Congress, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu of TDP, and Mr. Jagan Reddy of YSR Congress. And I worked very closely with Mr. Jagan Reddy. So I have no reason to be politically partisan, but I have every reason to be legally, factually correct. I cannot be, if being factual, being objective, being straightforward, and being non-partisan is considered to be political. Yes, if that is the case, then I am political. I am political for the people of India and people of Andhra Pradesh. And I believe whatever was done and whatever I had done was done in absolute good faith and for the good of the people.
Okay, so anyway, the YSRCP points out that the fact that the magistrate decided to give remand to a judicial custody is itself proof that there cannot be smoke without fire. There must be some prima facie evidence. Let's see what the CID says. Thank you very much, Mr. Ramesh, for joining and explaining your side of the story. Let's see how the entire thing pans out. Meanwhile, Mr. Naidu continues to be in jail. His bail application will come up next week. Tune into the News Minute for all the updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.